What's up YouTube, it's your boy Nash here, welcome back to the channel. Now before we get started with what could possibly be one of the best videos I've ever done in my career as a content creator, just want to give you guys a heads up that we are now 210 subs away from hitting 500 subs. And if you guys are new to the channel, and I know that a lot of you guys are, because practically 100% of you guys are watching the content, but you guys are not even subscribed. So if you guys are watching the content, you like the content, and you want more of the content, but you guys have not subscribed as of yet, then make sure you guys do indeed subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, smash that thumbs up button on this video, and as always, be sure to follow me on all of my social media. All of my ads will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. If you guys want to send me fan mail and want me to open it up on the channel, all the info will be in the description as well. And I want you guys to post in the comments below answering the question of the day, which in a way it kind of ties with today's video, but the question of the day is this: do you guys believe that Vince McMahon deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame? Let me know down in the comments below. And for today's video, we got something very insane, very special for you guys, because I'm going to be doing an in-depth review on the Vince McMahon docu-series that can be streamed right now on Netflix. So this could very may well be one of my longest videos ever, so get ready, you guys, because the amount of notes that I took over the course of the last like 6 weeks is astronomically crazy. I took 15 pages worth of notes. So get ready. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. So the name of the docu-series is called Mr. McMahon. It talks about how Vince got his start into the wrestling business, and how he turned WWE from a small promotion to the biggest juggernaut in television history. And interestingly enough, the first episode of the docuseries basically gives us an in-depth look at how he got his start. So here we go, guys. So episode 1 is called Junior, and it talks about again as I stated, it talks about how Vince got into the wrestling business. So interestingly enough, he actually got his start in the business as an announcer for a promotion called All-Star Wrestling, which I believe, if I can try and do this really quickly, let's see. All-Star Wrestling. So All-Star Wrestling was a promotion that was founded by Brian Dixon in 1970. So he actually and their headquarters is in Birkenhead, England, which is overseas in the UK. Interestingly enough, again, he was an announcer for them, basically for the end part, which was part of the which had a bit of a which had a bit of a what you call it, a bit of a weird like relationship, if you will, business relationship with the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, and he was in that promotion for quite some time until he told his father, Vince Sr., that he wanted to buy WWE from him, and Vince Sr. said, "Okay, sure, you wanna buy it from me? No problem, but you have to meet certain conditions." And And interestingly enough, the condition was that Vince had to make more money than what he spent. And I think, and if I remember right, Vince, in fact, he actually bought WWE, from his father Vince Sr., which I believe was at around. He bought it for literally half $500,000, $500,000, and Vince Sr. told his son that that he had to turn WWE into a business like juggernaut, if you will, and he did. He did exactly that. And the condition was that if he didn't, then Vince Sr. would take WWE back from his son. And interestingly enough, because that Vince Jr. Vincent Kennedy McMahon had bought WWE from his own father, Vince broke the barriers of wrestling territories and started to work with other promotions, and even also as well brought in some of the biggest names from other promotions, including guys like Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Sergeant Slaughter, the Hart Foundation, Rowdy Roddy Piper, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, the Ultimate Warrior. Who else can I name? Andre the Giant, just to name a few. And because of that, right, and because of that, over time, Vince realized that he needed somebody to take WWE to heights never imagined during the what we fans call it as the golden era, where literally it was exactly one person basically being the face of WWE for over a decade. And interestingly enough, Vince ended up choosing Hulk Hogan, and he did so by making Hulk Hogan WWE champion in 1984, right before WrestleMania 1. And because of that, Hulk Hogan became the biggest star in WWE, doing media presses, doing radio shows, helping WWE excel, helping Vince grow WWE to some massive heights. And it actually worked. It actually worked because WWE actually acquired a business deal, if you will, with MTV, and they hosted 2 shows there, which they worked out pretty well. And they actually made WWE a huge success. However, in the process of in the process of making the WWE a massive success, Vince Sr. sadly passed away at the age of 69, and one of the last words that he said to his son was, "I'm proud of you." which that right there was the only thing that Vince wanted. He wanted the approval of his father, and he got it. He actually got it. But it's weird. It's weird because when you look at how it all came about as far as WrestleMania goes, they basically promoted WrestleMania 1 through the roof, like literally having multiple radio shows and whatnot, and even also doing, being a part of a talk show, excuse me, with none other than Richard Belzer. Shout outs to him. He actually had his own show, and that's where everything kind of got a little interesting, to say the very least. In fact, actually, Richard Belzer actually sued WWE for getting hurt by none other than Hulk Hogan, and I think Hogan pronounced it as an accident. I think mostly just because I think Richard Belzer asked Hogan, to show off what a headlock was, and yeah, it didn't really work out so well. Interestingly enough, I think many years later, I think in sometime in the 90s, Richard Belzer actually won his case against WWE, which was pretty crazy. But with WrestleMania 1, it became a massive success. It was huge. It became the biggest thing in closed circuit television history, because that's what it was on. It was on closed circuit TV, and it became a huge, again, it succeeded really well with like hardly any money, which is insane. However, right after WrestleMania 1, there was a lot of bullshit that happened, including some lawsuits involving some really lewd scandals, I will say. In fact, actually, a man by the name of John Stossel actually sued a man by the name of David Schultz and WWE, mostly for some bullshit that had happened to him, because David Stossel was a guy who was trying to basically dig up dirt from about the wrestling business, and he got assaulted, and by David Schultz, if I remember correctly, and he actually won. Apparently, he had won his case against David Schultz and WWE. So it was kind of crazy. It was pretty crazy to hear about that, but those were basically some of the highlights of the interviews from the first episode. And it's crazy to know that WrestleMania 1 became a huge success, even in spite of the fact that they made money off of ticket sales and merch sales. That was it. Back in those days, that was the only way that WWE made money, was through merch sales and ticket sales as well. And WrestleMania 1 damn near sold out. The whole building was damn near sold out, and they made quite a bit. They made quite a bit of money off of that. But I can tell you right now, the second episode is where things get very interesting. So the second episode was called Heat, and it talks about how it talks about all the lawsuits that Vince had to deal with post WrestleMania 1. so for those who were curious about Saturday night's main event, you guys are familiar with the show Saturday Night Live, right? You are? Well, if you're not, it's basically comedy gone wrong, I will say. But because that Saturday Night Live had took a massive um, break, Vince created Saturday Night's main event as sort of like a replacement, if you will, for Saturday Night Live, and it became a huge success. Um, a huge success. However, back in those days, um, because that you weren't allowed to take breaks, take time off after your break, after your matches and whatnot, the performers, get this, had to take painkillers to ease the pain and continue to wrestle. That was what and they had no choice but to work while in pain. And this actually caused this actually caused a lot of heat online, and the performers had no health protection, like health insurance, I guess if you will. With WWE, there was no like health plan, if you will. WWE didn't provide it. You had basically, as the performer, had to provide it for yourself. And interestingly enough, Jesse the Body Ventura, WWE Hall of Famer, actually started a union, and apparently, get this, Hulk Hogan ratted out Jesse the Body right before WrestleMania 2. And it's weird because WrestleMania 2 was considered one of the worst WrestleManias of ever at that time, because it was in 3 different cities. New York, it was in New York City, Chicago, and right here in Los Angeles. And it became quite the disaster because they had to have 3 sets of commentators, three different ring announcers, excuse me, and 3 different sets of referees, which some of them didn't even want to be in the wrestling business. They were just there, you know. But even though it became a disaster, they still made money off of it, which was absolutely wild. And it's like I said, ticket sales and merch sales were the key reasons why WWE was able to make money at that time. And it's weird because when you fast forward to WrestleMania 3, which became the biggest WrestleMania ever at that time, with 93,193 fans selling out the Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan. Andre the Giant was in a lot of pain, and there were a lot of like rumors that Hogan was gonna drop the title to Andre, but that didn't work out, because that Andre was in so much pain. They had to work within his with his, like, I guess his I guess with how Andre moved in the ring, and he did not move very well. He was very slow, and unfortunately he had to take painkillers to work the match with Hogan. And interestingly enough, we didn't think that Andre was going to kick out after that body slam, and he actually didn't. It took Andre several minutes to get out of the ring and to be able to walk backstage. So WrestleMania 3 did work out really well. However, when you look at the amount the attendance record that WrestleMania 3 had, it sparked a lot of controversy and a lot of heat. Apparently, people were saying that there were only less than 30,000 fans that showed up to the building, and Vince actually ridiculed it. Funny enough, which is kind of crazy. So not long after that, Vince wanted to create a movie. Yeah, he wanted to create a movie with Hulk Hogan, and they both created the movie No Holds Barred, which became a massive disaster. They did that movie with no money with hardly any money whatsoever. And that movie got so many bad reviews over time. Even now, even now in, by the standards of 2025, thinking about it, if you were to watch that movie, the first 10 minutes, maybe even the first 20 minutes, you would look at it and be like, oh god, this sucks. And it did. It sucked bad. But it's weird because throughout, because from WrestleMania 3 to WrestleMania 5, I guess, if you will, at that point Hogan was still the biggest star in WWE, but because that WWE was ushering in a new era, they needed somebody to hand the torch to, and interestingly enough, out comes the Ultimate Warrior, who already was a massive fan favorite by the fans, and so WrestleMania 6 was dubbed the Ultimate Challenge. Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior, champion versus champion, title for title. The WWE title versus the Intercontinental title, in which Ultimate Warrior won and became world champion, but the reason why that was the case, the reason why the Ultimate Warrior became the top guy in WWE, was because there were a lot of fans that were sick and tired of Hogan being the face of WWE, because of all of the heat that he had gotten over the previous 3-4 years. However, it's weird. It's weird because during that time, because that the Ultimate Warrior was super jacked, had muscles on muscles in places that you didn't even know had muscles. Dr. George Zahorian and Vince actually got sued for distributing steroids, and apparently those steroids were distributed to several wrestlers, and unfortunately, Dr. Zahorian actually got sent to 3 years in prison because of it, and because of that, multiple wrestlers ended up getting fired for ended up getting released for the use of steroids, including guys like uh, uh, Bad News Brown. There was like I think there was a member of Demolition that got released. There were quite a few. There were quite a few that got fired, and and it's weird. It's weird because Vince actually folded as well. He folded on the WBF. Um, um, which I believe, let's see, on the World Bodybuilding Federation, the WBF, um, and he got a lot of heat for it because of mostly because of the steroid um uh lawsuit that he had endured. So yeah, he folded on that. He backed off. He wanted to invest in it, but it didn't. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. Um, and because of the steroid thing, Hogan got a lot of heat on it because he had talked about it on the Arsenio Hall show, and there were multiple wrestlers that called him out for that precise moment, including guys like Bret Hart, guys like Randy Savage, Jesse the Body Ventura. A lot of people called him out on it, and and there was another guy who tried to dig up a lot of dirt on uh, on WWE, and that man was known as Phil Mushnick. He actually worked for the New York Post, and because of his findings, I guess if you will, WWE had sparked up even more controversy, um, and the things that he wrote sparked a lot of controversy in the eyes of fans, um, including the idea of Vince and all the scandals that I guess he had. I would say what they are, but I'm sure you guys already know what I'm talking about. Um, in fact, the local feds, the feds had actually targeted WWE for a lot of assault and harassment, um, and Vince got sued for it. Over time, yes, obviously yes, over time, yes, Vince did deny all the allegations. He even believed and actually said that the scandals were all conspiracy theories, and he said that to protect WWE, which I don't blame him. I don't blame him whatsoever. There was even also a female referee by the name of Rita Marie, and she accused Vince of um, of assault. And again, you guys already know what that is. Not even gonna say it, for obvious reasons, but that was one of the reasons why she left WWE, and she became the very first ever referee in professional wrestling for WWE. And it's weird because at that time Vince had Vince's lawsuit had went on for days, and he actually chose to plead not guilty on the charges, he believed he even said that it ain't true. But there was one person that decided to decided to testify against Vince, and that man was Hulk Hogan. Um, because that he wanted to leave to leave WWE. Excuse me. He actually chose to testify testify against Vince, for all the scandals, the steroid use, and all that, and he ended up leaving WWE to work with Ted Turner in WCW, which in which that became a massive slap in the face to Vince, and he apparently he became a witness to sort of a eyewitness, a testifier, if you will, in the scandal lawsuit. Um, even now, thinking about it in 2025, there's been a lot of reports saying that Vince has denied, still to this day denies all the allegations, which is insane. Yeah, so yeah, that's what happens when you end up when you when you end up in a world of shit. You end up getting sued, and it never is pretty. I will say, I think I don't know. I honestly don't know what to make of the whole thing, but I will say that it ended up becoming one of the most controversial times for WWE, and for Vince, right? You know, right? I mean, Hogan ended up becoming the face of WWE once again because of the fact that the Ultimate Warrior, he couldn't do it. Hogan had to. It was just crazy, absolutely insane. But we move into episode 3, known as Screwjob, and it talks about and it talks about it talks about the Monday Night Wars, and also the infamous Montreal Screwjob. So there was a lot that took place during this time. So Vince obviously ended up having issues with Wendy Richter in over the women's title. She wanted to remain women's champion. Vince wanted her to drop the title, but she chose not to, and so Richter was forced into a match with the fabulous Moolah. Moolah ended up winning the women's title. As I said in regards to the previous episode, Hogan did decide to testify against Vince amidst the move that he made over to WCW. Vince was found not guilty in all the bullshit, because apparently there wasn't enough evidence to find him guilty, which is kind of crazy. And because of the lawsuits, WWE had lost a lot of money, fans, and even also multiple executives, and also a lot of sponsors as well, which is absolutely wild. But obviously that can obviously happen. It can ruin your reputation. We all know. Obviously, because that Hogan left WWE for WCW, Vince needed to find someone to take that spot, and that was obviously Bret Hart. He chose Bret Hart to be the face of WWE, the top star of WWE, and several talent actually moved to WCW in the 90s because of the fact that Ted Turner opened up his checkbook, because he had more money than Vince, and was more into the wrestling business, as he called it. And Vince was like, I don't care. I'm in the world of entertainment, plain simple. So, uh, so interestingly enough, there were a lot of talent that moved to WCW in the early to mid '90s, including guys like Hogan, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, the Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. There were a lot of people that moved over there, and interestingly enough, when WWE first aired, started to air episodes of the weekly show Monday Night Raw as we see now, Ted Turner and Eric Bischoff were like, all right, let's create our own show and do it live instead of taping it. So they created Monday Nitro to start up the Monday Night Wars, and Bischoff chose to make wrestling real, for some of the older fans, who were into the real shit. And compared to WWE, who chose to tape their shows, Eric Bischoff made the decision to make Monday Nitro live every single Monday, and he chose to upset fans Bischoff actually pissed off a lot of fans for leaking the results of every single episode of Monday Night Raw, which included the moment that Mick Foley was gonna win the WWE title from The Rock, which was absolutely insane. The skits that WCW had made, taking shots at Vince and WWE, the USA Network actually stopped airing episodes of Raw, and apparently Ted Turner was actually friends with someone who worked at USA, which is kind of crazy. There were a lot of talent that didn't appreciate the tribute going away party that Shawn and Triple H did for Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Because of the fact that both Hall and Nash were going over to WCW, and it just generated a lot of heat for Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And at that time, kayfabe was used a lot back then, which is kind of crazy. And then obviously, because that Hall and Nash moved over to WCW and formed the NWO with Hulk Hogan, that was what sparked the Monday Night Wars and took those wars to a whole new level. And WWE actually sued Ted Turner and WCW for stealing some of the resources that Vince had, and also for trying to put WWE out of business. And obviously we knew that Vince saw wrestling different compared to Ted Turner. But the NWO just became the biggest thing going in professional wrestling, and because of the NWO, Nitro, WCW had defeated WWE in the ratings for 83 weeks straight, and at one point Bischoff did try out for WWE as a reporter, but unfortunately he didn't make the cut, which is unfortunate. Excuse me, but this is where the screw job comes into play. So Vince wanted to keep Bret Hart in WWE, trying to sign him to a 20-year deal, but Bret Hart chose not to, and chose to go to WCW. Because of the contract decline, Brett actually lost his title, lost the WWE title to Shawn Michaels, and it was actually Vince's idea to cost Bret Hart that very same world title. And Vince told everybody backstage, if the Hart family asks you, you had no idea. And Bret Hart actually punched Vince in the face for it, and the entire Hart family hated WWE, hated WWE, and because of that, that's what sparked the birth of the Attitude Era and the heel character of the man we've known for years as Mr. McMahon. Which obviously brings us to episode 4, known as Attitude. Looking at episode 3, though, it's kind of crazy of how the Montreal Screwjob became one of the most iconic moments in professional wrestling. And I will say, Bret Hart actually believes that he made the right decision on going to WCW. But it's weird. It's weird because when you look at episode 4, known as Attitude, it was all about the Attitude Era, right? He learned how to wrestle from a man by the name of Dr. Jerry Lynn, and in a interview promo, Vince claimed Bret screwed Bret during in Montreal, and apparently Vince had no sympathy for Bret whatsoever, and he actually chose to continue to use the whole Mr. McMahon character as a heel character, which became such an iconic deal. It became so it actually worked. It got over with the fans in terms of heat and lawsuits, which is kind of crazy. And in fact, the Attitude Era was born because of Shawn Michaels forming DX alongside Triple H, China, and Ravishing Rick Rude, which DX versus the NWO was basically the Monday Night Wars. DX doing their own thing on Raw, and the NWO doing their own thing on Nitro, and during the Attitude Era, it was mostly fans who were between the ages of 18 to 34 who were watching a Monday Night Raw, mostly because of the fact that all of the sex appeal that was going on, surrounding women like Sable and Tori and Trish during at that time. And then interestingly enough, ECW came into the fold. Try to sneak their way into the ratings wars, and it kind of worked out for a brief moment. And then obviously we know that Stone Cold signed with WWE coming out of ECW, and we all know that he had won. He was gonna win. He had won King of the Ring in '97, and not Triple H. Reason being was because of the send off that Shawn and Hunter had with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and that was where the whole Austin 316 promo was born, was because of his victory over Jake the Snake Roberts, which which took WWE to heights never thought possible, just in terms of ratings, which is incredible. We saw Mike Tyson show up as well, um, even though he was charged with uh, rape 3 years prior, actually, which is kind of crazy. I shouldn't have said that, but that was what had happened. And even that gave WWE a lot of heat, but going into WrestleMania 14, a lot happened. Um, a lot happened, and WrestleMania 14 became one of the most forgettable nights in history because of the fact that Shawn Michaels was hurt, and they needed somebody to take WWE straight into the Attitude Era, and that was obviously Stone Cold Steve Austin. Which, interestingly enough, his rivalry with Vince became one of the most talked about rivalries. Even now, to this day, it's still one of the most talked about rivalries of all time. And that rivalry actually brought ratings to WWE, to which they were able to finally win the Monday Night Wars over WCW. And obviously, we knew that Vince became one of the most hated guys in WWE because of a lot of the shit that he had done, including stripping Stone Cold of the WWE title, forming the corporation faction. A lot happened, um, and and interestingly enough, Bischoff actually still to this day believed that Vince stole all of the ideas that the Attitude Era had from WCW. And The Rock also, The Rock even also got involved in the Attitude Era. He started WWE as a babyface, ended up becoming a heel. As part of the group, the Nation of Domination, and then ended up becoming a babyface for a brief moment. And then Survivor Series 1998 was when everything kind of took shape for The Rock as a heel, because Vince chose to reenact the Montreal Screwjob 1 year later after it, costing Mick Foley the WWE title in a tournament, to which The Rock and Mick, or I guess Mankind at that time, if you will, they were in the finals of that tournament, if you will, which is kind of crazy. And thus, again, Vince, Rock, and Shane were the brainchild, the masterminds, if you will, of the corporation faction. And there were a lot of and interestingly enough, because of how wild the fans were during the Attitude Era, the performers, the stars, they could not leave. They couldn't go anywhere without being bombarded by fans wanting to take photos, wanting to get autographs, and it got way out of control. And the Attitude Era's content, including sex scandals and all that, not sex scandals, the sexual content, I guess, if you will, sparked a lot of controversy and and even more lawsuits. And because of that, even little kids were actually watching WWE during the Attitude Era, and it sparked a lot of bullshit. And even the female talent in WWE at that time, they were considered like they were considered a main attraction for their sex appeal. And excuse me, it was very rare you would see them wrestle in the ring. But when they did, it was usually like a minute. That was it. And one of the biggest and one of the biggest divas, like the biggest diva stars in WWE at the time, was Sable, because she was able to show off both her talent in the ring and her sex appeal at the same time, making her one of the biggest like female stars at that time in WWE. And because that Bret Hart had left WWE, Owen Hart, um, yeah, Owen Hart chose to stay with WWE, which became his ultimate downfall, and it just was not good. They ended up they made a mockery out of Owen, and they turned Owen Hart back into one of his old characters known as the Blue Blazer, which completely backfired, and it turned into a very tragic moment, especially on May 23rd in 1999, where Owen Hart was supposed to have worked a match with the Godfather at a pay-per-view called Over the Edge. And apparently Owen Hart had hit his head. I don't remember if it was on the ring post or on the ring apron, but Jerry Lawler basically pronounced him dead. Literally, he pronounced him dead, and Vince sadly, unfortunately, continued to air that whole show, even in spite of Owen's death, which gave Vince more heat than ever before, because Owen's wife Martha had sued WWE on the day of Owen's funeral, and the device and the harness that Owen had used, Vince actually sued WWE. Vince sued the company for what had happened, and unfortunately the manufacturers said that it was a defective product, and the court basically ruled it as accidental death, and unfortunately both Martha's and WWE's lawsuits were both settled in 2000 and in 2003 respectively. And it's weird because the Attitude Era was the best thing going for WWE. And when you look at episode 5, known as Family Business, it goes a bit deeper into the Attitude Era, and it talks about how Shane and Stephanie wanted to both be in this business with Vince. Shane admitted that he wanted to be in the business, and he got his start as a referee, and he ended up becoming he had his own heel character with Vince during the Attitude Era. Stephanie also wanted to be in the business, but got her start in the late 90s, and actually started out as a babyface, marrying attempted to marry a man by the name of Test, but ended up as a heel marrying Triple H, which the fans ended up calling her a slut, which is kind of crazy, but because of Triple H and Stephanie getting married, that was what started the McMahon Helmsley regime, and both Triple H and Stephanie took over WWE for a hot minute. Obviously Shane was opposed to the idea of Stephanie and Hunter getting married. Interestingly enough, Vince actually wanted Stephanie's wedding to be live on TV, but unfortunately that didn't come to pass. As in 2003 at No Mercy, Stephanie and Vince were booked in a match together in, I believe it was either a street fight or in a I Quit match. Unfortunately, Stephanie had lost the match, which was kind of crazy. Linda McMahon played a huge role in WWE, being the CEO and being a babyface. Interestingly enough, but this episode talked about how Vince and Linda had met, which they met when he was 16, and she was more of a middle class um person, where and interestingly enough, they actually got married very young, which is crazy. And Linda admitted that she didn't want to be in the wrestling business, but Vince talked her into it. And Linda, in 2001, she got caught. She was in a storyline where Vince was having an affair with none other than Trish Stratus. And um if you guys had seen that whole storyline, you guys already know what happened. Vince had made Trish get on all fours and bark like a dog right before WrestleMania 17, which became a very memorable moment for WWE. The match between Vince and Shane was booked later on, for WrestleMania 17, which was a street fight in which Shane ended up winning. And because that and it basically just literally talks about how, it talks about everything that happened, from the Attitude Era going forward. And one of them was obviously, one of the moments was obviously Sable coming back to WWE after so many years. And because that, and Sable actually sued WWE for over $100 million for sexual assault. Spoiler, that was what I was getting at. But she ended up coming back to WWE many years later. And because of the whole Sable and Vince affair storyline, it drew quite a bit of quite the amount of ratings for a while. And he was even interviewed for Playboy magazine, talking about the business and whatnot. There was a lot, and because of the fact that Monday Night Raw was just dominating in the ratings, Ted Turner and WCW basically gave up. They gave up on creating big stars, and the content that they were producing was just complete trash. And after so many years, in 2001, Vince attempted to buy out WCW for $2.5 million, and it was stolen by Shane McMahon. Thus started the invasion in 2001. And obviously we knew that Vince had started the XFL, but it got scrapped mostly because of the fact that it didn't really work out. After the first season, it just didn't work out so well. And it became it just did nothing. Now, right now in 2025, I think The Rock now owns the XFL, which is kind of crazy. But there was a nonprofit organization called the World Wildlife Fund, and they actually sued WWE for using the term WWF. So right around the spring of 2002, they turned WWF into what we now know as WWE, and right before WrestleMania 18, Vince was like, you know what? I'll bring back Scott Hall, I'll bring back Kevin Nash, I'll bring back Hulk Hogan, and we'll see how this works. So the two matches, Scott Hall and Stone Cold Steve Austin, plus Hulk Hogan and The Rock, were both booked for WrestleMania 18. Both matches had delivered extensively, and it wasn't until later on in 2002, right around the spring of 2002, where Vince McMahon came up with the idea to bring Eric Bischoff to WWE and make him the Raw general manager until 2005, 2006, which became which Eric Bischoff sparked a lot of controversy, but it sparked ratings. It gave ratings to WWE and Monday Night Raw, which was incredible, and and because that Austin had retired from from in-ring competition full time in 2002, Vince needed to start needed to find who had ruthless aggression, and John Cena into the fold, thus starting the ruthless aggression era. And much much similar to the Attitude Era, the ruthless aggression era had a bit of a I guess a bit of a similarity of the Attitude Era. The only difference is that the ruthless aggression era showed more female talent, female talent wrestling in the ring, and it actually featured a women's champion that they were proud of, including having women like Jazz and Trish Stratus and Lita, and interestingly enough, anytime Shane or Stephanie would come up with an idea, Vince would sometimes reject the idea, just to make them just to try to make them go up to a much more higher standard, if you will, which is a bit unfortunate. But at one point, Shane wanted Vince to buy out the UFC, because the UFC was having some massive issues. But unfortunately, Vince chose not to. In fact, later on, the UFC was actually later on sold for over $4 billion, I think, by Zuffa, and it became a huge success. So I think in my opinion, just off of that alone, Vince dropped the ball. And then Shane had left WWE in 2009. Unfortunately, because of the fact that he wasn't really seeing eye to eye with Vince in terms of like creative and whatnot. So and then we found out as well that in 1999, Sable's lawsuit with WWE was later on settled. So episode 5 was known as Family Business, and it mainly just talked about the family, right? It talked about how the family was able to pretty much just make bring WWE to a much more higher standard, if you will. But we now move into the final episode, known as The Finish, and this one was actually kind of crazy, because it mainly just talked about there was a lot of things that were brought up in this episode, including the idea of the Battle of the Billionaires, hair versus hair at WrestleMania 23 against Donald Trump, and that match was created mostly because of the fact that Stone Cold Steve Austin had just retired several years prior, and they needed a big attraction matchup for WrestleMania 23, and this was basically that match was basically it. And then obviously if you guys had seen WWE back in 2007 like I did, you will know that Vince started had done a midlife crisis storyline, if you will, which ended with him being blown up in his limo, and that sparked a lot of controversy. But this is where things get interesting, because this episode talked about what happened to none other than Chris Benoit. Interestingly enough, excuse me, the whole midlife crisis storyline got scrapped because of the passing of Chris Benoit in 2007, and his death actually put WWE back in the crosshairs of some of the steroid lawsuits and the use of potential other drugs. And a man by the name of Christopher Nowinski debuted in WWE around 2002, but was forced to retire less than a year later because of a massive concussion. And he ended up studying. He went on to study to become a neurologist. And apparently, he found out that Benoit had suffered from CTE, which is actually to which CTE is known as is short for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is basically a brain disorder caused by getting a mass amount of head injuries. And so because that Benoit had used his head as a weapon in the ring for so long, and had gotten hit in the head by steel chairs, super kicks, and whatnot, Nowinski believed that was what caused Benoit to do what he did to his wife and his son. And unfortunately, Vince made the decision to stop the use of chair shots to the head, which was part of a storyline, like if you're like, the chair shots was a way to sell, and Vince chose to stop that. And he even also and because of Benoit's death, there were a lot of talent. There were a lot of wrestlers who had died at a very young age, including guys like Umaga and Rosie, who is Roman Reigns' brother. I think Matt Onawai, I think is his name. So yeah, which is kind of crazy. And because of what Benoit did, obviously, WWE had chose to forget about him and just move on, which is a bit unfortunate. But I feel like Benoit definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, at least in my opinion, anyway. But moving forward, fast forward to WrestleMania 30. It was basically Vince's idea to end the streak and get Brock over, and Undertaker did not want that. He knew that he was gonna win against Brock Lesnar and continue the streak, but at the very last minute, Vince was like, nope, we're gonna get Brock over. He's gonna end the streak, which that was just insane, absolutely insane. And because of the chaos of the Ruthless Aggression era, WWE Vince actually decided to change the ratings of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown from TV-14 to PG, and he also wanted to, and he did that so he can gain more sponsors for WWE. And because of that, fans that watched WWE during the Ruthless Aggression era, they didn't like the content of the PG era, because it was more focused on the families and the kids, and there would be like less action, I guess, if you will. And because of that, because of the PG era, the female talent in WWE had became wrestlers and not showing off their sex appeal. And that was what started the whole hashtag Give Divas a Chance thing, which drew in more female talent. Now, in 2025, we have one of the biggest female rosters we have ever seen. And Shane returned to WWE after 7 years in 2016 because he wanted to run WWE. He wanted to run Monday Night Raw, and that was what sparked Shane to have a match with Undertaker at WrestleMania 32, in which we had the brands split. And Vince was always, and apparently according to a lot of the talent, Vince was always considered a father figure to everybody in WWE, and WWE gained a lot of buzz on social media. Um, they gained multiple TV deals, including Netflix and Peacock, and of course the WWE Network, and even also gained a lot of money in stock over time in the 2010s and the 2020s. And then obviously and then in June of 2022, we had seen, we found out that Vince had stepped down from WWE. Later on, he came back. I think at that point, I think up until June 2022, I think the rest is pretty much history. We had seen on the news and on social media of what happened, including including the Netflix deal, the whole TKO thing, and even also even also the new lawsuit involving Janelle Grant and WWE, and actually Brock Lesnar got caught in the crosshairs of that lawsuit as well. Hence the reason why we hadn't seen why we never saw Brock Lesnar since SummerSlam in 2023. So that was pretty much it, right? Like that right there was Vince and his legacy, right? Like even with all of the lawsuits that he had dealt with and all that and whatnot, he always wanted to entertain the fans. He always wanted to give the fans the best content possible, and I think this was by far probably one of the best docu-series shows I had ever seen ever. This was incredible. There was a lot of good, like really good information that helped me realize that helped me realize that WWE again was a small promotion in the New York, Connecticut areas, and it became this huge juggernaut that we see now over a span of like what, 5, 6, maybe 7 decades at best. And the fact that WWE, the fact that it's now being run by Triple H in terms of creative and also the board of directors, that says a lot. And we even also found out that Seth Rollins wants to take over WWE if the opportunity presents itself. And honestly, I could see it. My thoughts on this docuseries: absolutely wild, absolutely incredible. I'm giving this one 5 stars. I think this was by far one of the craziest docuseries I've ever seen. And it's like I said, I told you guys this would be my longest video, and this has been. So if you guys have watched this video up until the very end, you guys are awesome. I love you guys. You guys are incredible. I honestly don't know if I'll be doing more of these in the future. But if I do, I will definitely let you guys know. Not really sure how this will turn out, but only time will tell. But with that being said, that will do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel and you guys want more WWE and Yu-Gi-Oh videos in the future, then make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and as always, make sure you guys are following me on all of my social media. All of my ads will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.